Supercarriers have been out for a couple months now, and they are kind of classified as being on the top of the food chain at the moment. They're strong, they're definitely much stronger than a normal capital, but of course they aren't immortal. Given enough DPS and given a good fleet, a super capital will die to sub capitals, and they can also die to a very good Dreadnought fleet. Now, I remember I used to jokingly call them immortal. Now, when I call a ship immortal, that's mostly referring to the tank that they have, but there is no immortal ship in the game. Every ship dies the same way, given enough DPS. Now, today I'll be trying to find out to see how much tank you really need to have on a Dreadnought to be able to withstand a DPS supercarrier, because recently I have seen a lot of supercarriers in action, and I have seen a lot of destroyed Dreadnoughts, a lot of killed carriers, in some cases even some faction carriers, and I've also seen some dead supercarriers. So it'll be fun to see what type of builds, what type of tank do you have to have on your ship in order to survive a glass DPS supercarrier. Now, I'll be doing this with every supercarrier. Today the video will be about the Wyvern, since I usually like to start with this ship, and this is the current build that I have on it. Quad fighter arrays to improve the DPS, and I also have the rigs set for the DPS. Triple burst and one collision for the fighters. And here you can take a look at the rest of the modules. Now, the Wyvern has a bonus on the mass guidance disruptor, but in this case I did fit one DPS shred module, and there is this engine disruption as well. The defense disruption module is good because it does reduce the resistance of your targets in a basically in a big bubble. It does have a very good range and a very strong effect. So this thing should have some very nice DPS. How much DPS? Well, let me show you that in action. It will be used with the Bombard implant, which is on level 45, and it has all the necessary general units to even improve the DPS even more. So there is a lot of DPS on this ship. Now, the Wyvern isn't really known for its DPS. It is more of a tank. It's the tankiest ship in the game, and if I do get a super capital, a supercarrier, it is most likely going to be this one, because I love tank, but it still can have some very scary DPS that you are going to see today. Now, it takes a while for me to rearrange the modules. It's still a mess when you undock for the first time. There's just so many modules, and yeah, hopefully I really hope that they improve the module layout, because at the moment it can really be a pain to just adjust everything to look good. But I think this will do. So, undocked, all quad fighter arrays active. 82,283.41 DPS. Now, this is the active DPS without the drone bomb implant, which honestly is pretty good. It's pretty solid DPS, and pretty happy with how it looks at the moment. Now, the Bombard tactic implant is giving you a 300% bonus on DPS. It does give you some crazy alpha damage as well, some high burst damage. Currently the most overpowered implant in the game. And I have the implant on level 45, so the effect will be basically maxed. So in total, I should have about 450 to 500,000 DPS on the ship with the Bombard tactic implant. And then there is this defense disruption module, which does reduce the enemy resistance by about 25 to 30%. Although in reality it does reduce about 5 to 10%, but still it does improve your DPS quite a bit. So we're looking at about maybe 500,000 DPS on this Wyvern. That's quite a bit of DPS, and should be quite a challenge for a Dreadnought to tank something like this. But I love a challenge, so I'll try to develop some builds that can withstand so much DPS. And here I have a bunch of Dreadnoughts that are going to be the test subjects today, and each Dreadnought has each Dreadnought has its own build. Now I have one cheap common build, which is with the batteries. This is the most common Dreadnought build that's widely used. It's fairly cheap, it's fairly tanky, it has quad batteries, and that's basically the default Dreadnought build that you will find out there. One of them will be like this, other one will be with a bit more tank, basically something, you know, in between having a classy tank and having something of my own, and the third will be the expensive one, which will have integrations and basically to replicate my old Dreadnought build that I had on the Revelation. So we will have 2 cheap Dreadnoughts and 1 expensive, and we will be comparing how long they live, how they perform in combat, and how long will they last against a DPS Wyvern. And I'll be showing you the active tank on every one of these ships, because why not, just to show you what to expect from these things here. So 3.3 million EHP, 79, 73, 81 and 80. Now to be honest with you, I expect a build like this to just crumble against a DPS super capital, since it has good capacitor, but it doesn't have enough resistances, and it simply doesn't have enough defenses to withstand so much alpha damage and so much DPS. So against a super capital, I don't really think that a classic Dreadnought build is going to do much. But again, we will see how that will work in actual combat, since, you know, theory is one thing, practical use, practical application is something completely else. So that's where the fun part is. Now, this is the second one, and I think this one will have my build on the Revelation. This is basically replicating my Revelation build that I used on my own Revelation. It has a bunch of adaptives, it is heavily integrated, and basically focused on maximum possible tanks. 7.2 million hit points, 87, 91, 90 and 89% resistance. This is without the thermal circulation implant. With the thermal circulation, the tank is even higher. And most of these Dreadnoughts will be used without a thermal circulation implant. 21.5 million hit points with the damage control active. Now I believe this can withstand a super capital, but again we will see how that will go in combat. And the next build is something between the classic battery build and something between my own build. Triple adaptives, 1 damage control, dual batteries and dual armor repairs. Again, this isn't integrated. It's a cheaper build, not integrated, so nothing too crazy. And I'll just add 1 scrambler. As you can see, here are the rigs. Again, classic rigs, no integrations, but will be fun to see how it will perform. Is Bling going to outperform a cheaper build, and if that happens, by how much? There's a lot of things that I want to find out today, since it'll be fun to see if you can actually manage to get a cheaper build that can easily survive a glass supercarrier. Now, most of the supercarriers aren't that difficult to kill. Most of them have a glass build, and you know, glass build still has doesn't have much tank, so even enough DPS they will also crumble. So that's also one of the ideas. Now this has 12.3 million hit points, 95, 93, 95 and 95%, which is good. It looks good, almost the same as the integrated build, but it should be interesting to see how it will last. And I'll give you also an explanation on why they die, if they die, why they die, and what failed, and when it failed, so that we can piece everything together here. That was the Revelation. Let's go to the Moros. The Moros has a bonus on armor repairs. Basically one of the best armor repairs in the game. It performs really well. And this is the classic Moros, built with quad batteries, dual adaptives and dual armor repairs. Now, I believe that this is not going to live that long, since this thing really lacks resistances, and I believe the bombard combined with the defense disruption is simply going to melt this thing with this build. I don't think that the armor repairs will be able to keep up with the insane alpha and crazy DPS coming from the Supercarrier. But again, we will find out. That's why I'm here, to find out if it can or if it can't live. 2.7 million hit points, 74, 66, 80 and 72% resistance. So definitely lower armor resistance than the Revelation, but much better armor repairs. Will be interesting to see how this thing will do versus the Wyvern. Against the normal Dreadnought, it will definitely live long. Basically, you can keep the batteries cycling permanently, and that also works on literally every Dreadnought in the game. It's a very interesting build, and I like it. But will it work against the Super Capital? Well, we will find out. Now, the next Moros here is going to have a slightly different build. This is the expensive one. This is the heavily integrated Moros, which has a replicate build from my Revelation, full on armor resistance and full on integrations for a good tank. It has some very fat armor repairs, so it should. I think this can out repair a glass Wyvern or a glass Super Capital, since it does offer some very good tank, and with a good tank also has some very nice armor repairs. You take a lot of damage, but you also repair a lot of damage. The damage control became a very important module nowadays, since the damage control really does save your ship from taking crazy damage. And there is a balance patch coming up in September, so we will see how that will go as well. Now, interestingly enough, this has lower overall EHP than the Revelation, with almost the same build, so that's also something to keep in mind, but still has some very good tank. And the third Moros here is going to have the fuse build, basically something in between the full-on battery build and my resistance tank. Triple adaptives, damage control, dual batteries, dual armor pairs, and it also doesn't have any integrations. Here you can take a look at the rigs as well. Let me show you the active stats. Now, at the moment, I don't really know what to think. I don't really know what will happen to these ships. But from what what I feel will happen, I don't expect the battery tanks to live. I expect the battery tanks to just crumble against the crazy DPS coming from the Supercarrier. And they do the same thing in Evil Line, by the way. Supercarriers eat alive Dreadnoughts, and Titans eat alive everything else. So, yeah, we don't have Titans here yet, but when they do get released, you can expect the Titans to be also quite strong. 9.9 million hit points with the damage total. I think this build might do well, but we will see.
Accepted.
So, let's go to the next Dreadnought, which will be the Nidhoggur, or I think it will be the Nidhoggur. Yeah, it is. Okay. So, the Nidhoggur is known to be the tankiest Dreadnought in the game. It has really good shield boost performance, and it's a Dreadnought that's mostly used with the battery build. So, if there is a Dreadnought that can survive, that I have high hopes that it can survive the high burst, I believe it might be this one, since the shield boost performance on this thing is really good. It does boost very fast, and it's also built to last. So this is the battery tank build. Again, no integrations, classic rigs, and it should have some very good shield resistances, but again, we will see how it will perform versus the DPS Wyvern. It has 3.3 million hit points, 79, 79, 74 and 78% resistance. Not bad, pretty balanced. Pretty balanced, and should be good with the dual boosters. Of course, if you have your own builds, that's something in between, then you can approximately estimate how long can your ship last versus a glass supercarrier. Again, the Wyvern will be performing with a maxed out bombarding plant with full on DPS rigs, everything literally put into the ship for maximum possible DPS. This is the expensive build, triple Lapis, one reactive, damage control battery, and dual boosters. Now, I don't really like to use the Nidhoggur with one battery because, as you guys know, the ship boosters eat a lot of capacitor. So I believe with this build, it might be able to tank for a while, but eventually the capacitor will be the main problem here. But again, we will see what will happen. That's just what I expect to happen based on my experience with how the modules work. 7 million hit points, 88, 89, 91 and 90%. This is actually pretty solid tank. And of course there is the damage control. With the damage control it has about 20.7 million, 96, 96, 97 and 97%. This is tanky, so it will probably survive for a while, but eventually the capacitor will be the issue. But we will see what will happen with that. And let's go on to the Phoenix. Now the Phoenix has good shield resistance, but I never really felt like the Phoenix was really tanky. It always felt like a ship that's easy to kill. Now it is good to be used in a fleet as a anti-capital or super capital ship. Has some very good alpha damage if built for DPS, but if there is I don't think that the Phoenix will survive this, to be honest. That doesn't. Something tells me that it's not going to do well versus super capitals, but we will see what will happen. This is the battery built Phoenix, although it kind of feels weird to fit a Phoenix this way, but I've seen it in action this way, so it's one of the builds that are widely used. Although again, the Phoenix is mostly used in a Phoenix bomb. A Phoenix bomb is basically a group of Phoenix Dreadnoughts that are being thrown at a capital ship, and basically a bunch of these ships with DPS, they melt a capital within seconds. They can potentially do that quite easily. Maybe it also can be done versus a super capital, since again they do some really high alpha damage if they're built for DPS. Next Phoenix build, I think this is going to be the expensive one. Now on paper it actually has some really good numbers, and on paper again it looks like the second tankiest ship that you will see here, the second tankiest Dreadnought, but its shield booster performance isn't really the best, and it really depends on how it will perform against the high damage that's going to come from the Supercarrier. It might hold, it might get destroyed very quickly. With the things, I don't really know what to expect. One thing that I can expect, if it ends up surviving for a while, it will be the same case as with the Nidhoggur. One battery with dual capital shield boosters means that eventually the capacitor on this thing will go down, since the capital boosters eat a lot of capacitor. However, 8.3 million hit points, and this is actually a solid sheer tank now. Some good stats as well, and with the damage control, it has about 24 million hit points, 24.8 million hit points, 86, 97, 97, and 98%. So on paper, it looks amazing, but we will have to find out how it will perform in actual combat. And this is the build that's balanced between the builds, between the expensive one and between the battery build. This build is kind of, I think it will perform really well, but we will see what will happen when these ships get to fight with the Wyvern. And let me quickly show you the active stats, and then we can proceed towards the combat part, which is, I think, the most exciting part on this video. 5.4 million hit points, not bad, pretty good. And with the damage control active, it is about 16.2 million. No, not bad actually. Really good numbers. So on paper, the Phoenix should be the second tankiest in this Dreadnought fleet that I have here. But of course, only one way to find out. So the main screen here, the big screen, will be the Wyvern, and on the left side we can see the Dreadnought, warping the Dreadnought on the Wyvern. The first one will be the Nidhoggur, since I'm very interested to see how will the Nidhoggur perform. Now this is the battery build, the one that I showed you earlier. Quad batteries, dual adaptives and dual boosters. This is one of the more classic builds, one of the classic Dreadnought builds that you will encounter in the game. If you have a Dreadnought, most likely you have a very similar build to this one, or perhaps even the exact copy of this build. So the main question is how it will perform versus a glass super capital. Now most of the super capitals that are currently flying out there are not tanks. Most of them, like 80%, are full DPS. About 15% are something between DPS and tank, and about 5% that I have seen are integrated tank builds. Those that are heavy integrated tank builds, they are kept secret. So yeah, the DPS ones are being actively used. The expensive super tanks, they're being kept secret. There are a couple of them that I know of, but I know a lot more of the DPS ones. I actually helped fit one of these ships, a couple of them, for a couple pilots, so I kind of know what DPS they have and the tactics that they use. Now let's light up this this Dreadnought. Immediately, as you can see, it did take some big damage, and that's some very fat alpha that I'm doing on the that almost tore the whole shield off, but it survived. Actually, it survived the initial bombard of the bombard tactic implant, which is already pretty interesting. Now you have to be very fast on the shield boosters. You really don't want to miss a single cycle, since if you do that, the ship just gets yeeted. So now it does easily tank about 88,000 DPS. I have activated the disruption modules, and the DPS that the Dreadnought will take should increase by quite a bit, since now the Dreadnought's resistances have been drastically reduced. Now when I say drastically reduced, the Nidhoggur lost about 5 to 10% on all damage types for the next like 30 seconds to 1 minute, but still it does tank quite well. You can definitely notice the lost resistance, but it held out really well. Now let me load in the bombs and let me launch the bombs again. The effect is still there, and as you can see, it did some really high alpha damage. Okay, the Nidhoggur lost shield for a second, and it did take some armor damage, but now the shield boosters are overpowering my DPS. So if you combine the defense disruption with the bombard tactic, you definitely will do some serious damage. But the Nidhoggur was able to withstand. It took some armor damage, but it's alive, and now it's working on boosting up the shield back to 100%. So a Nidhoggur with 4 batteries with the classic build, theoretically and in practical use, is tanking a DPS super capital. Now, this is a battle to the death, so I will be doing my best to try and kill this Dreadnought. So, loading back in the drones, this defense disruption module is still on cooldown. Now, I would actually use two of them, but I noticed that the effect of only one defense disruption is actually taking place. So maybe you can use two and just launch the first one, then when the effect of the first one goes away, then you launch the second one. That's also one thing that I haven't thought of at the time, but you can use two, you can use one, it really depends on how you like to build the ship. I use one, since I think it's basically enough to kill a Dreadnought, and so far we will see what will happen. So, the Nidhoggur boosted up the shield to 100%. I also launched the bombs, and it did survive the bombs quite easily, so a battery-built Nidhoggur can survive about 450 to 500,000 DPS coming from a Supercarrier without a damage at all. So this is already a pretty good start for this ship. Already a pretty good start for this Dreadnought. Now let me load in the bombs, launching bombs again. Boosters are back on. I am doing some heavy damage on it, but the Nidhoggur is still alive, and the bombs do some serious damage. It almost wipes out the whole shield, but the effect doesn't last long enough to go through the shield and to go into armor. So, and just like that, the Dreadnought boosted up the shields almost to 100%. Now the defense disruptors will come into play very soon, and I'll try to combine the defense disruptor with the bombs. But so far I am pretty happy with the performance of the Nidhoggur. This build seems to be holding really well so far. I actually expected it to just crumble with the DPS, but it didn't. It held its own ground, which is interesting. Okay, pulling back the drones for reloads, to load in the bombs. Okay, defense disruptors are there. Let's launch them, launching the fighters.
Attack.
Boosters are back online on the Nidhoggur. Okay, 50% shield.
Damaged.
Well, that's 20% shield. That was massive. And now the Nidhoggur is at about 40% shield, but it is boosting quite actively. Did some armor damage, I believe. Yep, I'm doing some armor damage. The Nidhoggur is slowly going down. Now and then some hits go through the shield and impact the armor, but it's holding still really well. The defense disruption is really helping to just wipe the Dreadnought off the grid. The Nidhoggur boosting shield has some good. It still has good capacitor, and it's still boosting shields, but the armor has nearly been destroyed. But it's boosting back. I think it's going to start overpowering my DPS very soon. Still boosting a little bit. The Nidhoggur almost in hull, and yeah, now it's starting to overpower my DPS. The second the effect of the defense disruptor went offline, the Nidhoggur boosted up the shield, and now their shield is nearly at 100%. Well, honestly impressed so far.
We're under attack.
At the moment, the Nidhoggur is the best performing quad battery Dreadnought in this
Shield
test.
damaged.
Drone bombs loaded, but as we have already seen, the Nidhoggur can withstand the drone bombs, so it will easily tank that. But on the next cycle, with the defense disruptor and with the drone bombs, I believe that the Nidhoggur will be dead. So now you know that if you have this build, you can technically hold for quite a while against a super capital, so that you can hold the target, hold the Nidhoggur, hold the Wyvern, and hope that your corp alliance and coalition does come to help you, since you can technically bait a super capital with a very tanky Dreadnought and basically just hot drop on them. And that's one of the ways on how to catch these ships, since most of these ships have literally no tank. I mean, they have, like, when I say no tank, they're huge. They have a lot of shield, a lot of armor, a lot of hull. But if they're built like this, they're not going to tank a lot. Bring like 10, 15, 20 Dreadnoughts and you can melt down a super capital in no time. You will have to have some force auxiliaries, of course. You will have to have support, but if you manage to bait a super capital with a very tanky Dreadnought, you can hold for a very long time, and it literally can buy you enough time for a whole fleet to gather and basically drop on the super capital. Since so far this Nidhoggur is still alive here, not going to be for long though, that's for sure. Defense disruptors slowly coming online. I'm pulling back the fighters. I think the next cycle will basically kill the ship, but we will see what will happen. Bombs loaded, disruptors
We're under
engaged,
attack.
fighters out. Boosters on Nidhoggur are active. Okay,
Shield
it's
damaged.
still alive. Low shield. The effect of the disruptors are active.
Shield damaged.
Well, it's still boosting at low shield.
Shield
That's some
damaged.
impressive shield booster performance, not gonna lie. And it's still alive somehow. Although
Shield
slowly breaking, I believe. It's literally tanking like 20%, less than 20% of shield. And yeah, it's going to, I think it's going to overpower my, or not. Okay, they are in hull. They are in hull. Okay, they take some hull damage there. That's still boosting shield like there is no tomorrow. It's some fantastic points. And let's load back the bombs. This means that they will boost up the shield to 100%, which is fine. But yeah, they're at about 55% hull.
Attack.
Drone bombs are loaded. Launching them back at, yeah, there we go. Nidhoggur destroyed. It took me a while to kill this thing. I honestly did not expect it to live this long. I expected it to just get wiped off the grid in a second, but it didn't. It actually lived for a good amount of time. So, at the moment, the battery build, the best performing battery build goes to the Nidhoggur. That was good. Impressed, and the thing lived for quite a while. Okay, now let's go and launch the balanced build between my own build and between the battery build. This is the triple adaptive and 1 damage control. Now, based on the performance of the first build, I actually expect this one to do better. However, since I have only 2 batteries, the capacitor performance is probably going to be much worse. But the overall tank should be much better, and actually curious to see how it will do against the Wyvern. Now, this is the same Wyvern, same build, same modules, same everything. And the only thing that's going to be new here is a new Dreadnought that's going to be yeeted at the super capital. So
Warp drive
the
active.
Dreadnought is in warp. Now I start to shoot when the Dreadnought goes into siege, since that's I think that's the fair thing to do. That way the performance is already going to be full power. Now the damage total, as I mentioned before, is a very important module, since it can easily absorb a lot of high DPS, a lot of high burst DPS. It's basically what saved my revelation with against that big hot drop. So technically, a super strong build can tank up to 1+ million DPS for a short amount of time. Basically, you can tank that DPS while the damage drop is active. So
We're under
in theory it
attack.
means we can also
We're
tank
under
a super
attack.
capital just fine. But again, we will see what will happen. Alright, the battle started. So I immediately went after damage control. Actually, I didn't. The Nidhoggur effortlessly repelled the drone bombs without using the damage control. That is impressive. So basically I added one damage control, and that alone was literally enough to repel so much, to absorb so much DPS. I haven't even used the module yet, but it will be used down the road since I already have the... When the next cycle of the defense disruptor is on, and I'll combine that with the drum bombs, and then I'll use the damage control, since that's basically when you want to activate the module. You want to activate the module when there is literally the peak DPS coming towards your ships, and that's when the damage control will literally save your ship. And the cooldown will be nice. The cooldown actually is not that long.
We're under
By the
attack.
time the cooldown is finished, you can already activate it for a second time, and it will save your ship for a second time. So the first Dreadnought performed really well. The problem was definitely the tank. It lacked shield resistance to survive for longer. Now, as you can see immediately here, the capacitor is already performing much worse. So with this build, I can already see that you can live for as long as you have capacitor. Once the capacitor goes out, you will be dead. But for that time, you should be able to be here for quite a while before your ship dies. So you can technically be the hero tackle and hold the super capital until reinforcements warp in. But so far, this build on the Nidhoggur is performing really well. The damage that the Dreadnought is currently taking is much lower, and it is effortlessly just tanking everything that I'm throwing at it. Now the batteries
We're
can
under
be
attack.
used in a smart way. Basically use the booster only when necessary, and use the booster only when your shield drops below 50%. Since you really don't want to play around with a DPS super capital if you really want to activate the boosters on time. If you miss a cycle, it will just go straight to your armor. There's a good chance that it will happen. So that's one thing to note. If you have a damage control, you can technically rely on the damage control and save your capacitor by absorbing damage with the damage control, and then just boost up the shield when the capacitor battery is back up. But so far, quite impressed by this Dreadnought. It is performing really well. Capacitor can definitely be a problem, and in the longer run it is going to be a problem. So I mean, every fit has its ups and downs. You can't have it all, and I believe being able to survive for this long against a DPS super capital, I think that's already quite the achievement. So I really cannot complain about the performance of the Nidhoggur so far. It's amazing, and this is not even the chunkiest, this is not even the tankiest that I'm going to test out today. So excited to see how the next will perform. Right, so loading in the bombs,
under
and let's
attack.
see how this will do. Now, I have no damage control up yet, but let's see if it can survive. Actually, yeah, I have the damage control, okay. It is up. And as you can see, it's survived. The bombard charge is out, and the shield is literally intact. Even with the defense disruptor applied on the ship. It tanked incredibly well, and this is like not even such a expensive build. I wouldn't be that much surprised if it were an integrated build, but this is basically classic rigs, classic everything. I just changed one module. One module is everything I changed. Actually two. I replaced 2 batteries with 1 adaptive and 1 damage control. 1 adaptive and 1 damage control is basically all that I changed on this ship, and it is already tanking much better. Okay, loading back the bombs. The Nidhoggur is on 100% shield. The capacitor is actually okay now. Not as good as with the battery build, but you know, for what it is performing
attack.
good. Bombs are loaded, launching them back at the Nidhoggur. And 50% shield, okay.
Capacitor running low.
But it is, yeah, it is boosting up that back to 100%. Impressive. So far, I think, now when I think about it, makes me a bit more worried about the Phoenix. Since if this thing performs so well, how will the Phoenix perform? I still have the feeling that the Phoenix will kind of disappoint in terms of how much it can tank. But we will see what will happen. Okay, loading back, pulling back the fighters to load in the bombs. And I think that the defense disruptor will also come online very soon. However, the capacitor on the Nidhoggur is down, and I decided to spare the ship for a different test, since it's definitely tanked the Wyvern for quite a while, and it kind of deserved to live. But that same ship will be tested against other supercapitalists in a different video. So it survived the Wyvern, but will it survive some of the other supercapitalists? We will see. However, if I continue the fight, the Nidhoggur would definitely die, since it lost all the capacitor. It did have a capacitor battery coming online, but it lost capacitor, and in the next cycle, after a couple more minutes, it wouldn't have any capacitor or any capacitor batteries, and it would be killed. So it did last long, but eventually, in the end, it would also die. Now, the expensive builds.
Warp drive active.
I actually legitimately feel like that this build will not perform any better than the previous one, because one capacitor battery with a shield booster build with dual capital shield boosters is just pointing towards capacitor trouble. It's going to be capacitor heavy, but your one battery is most likely not going to be able to sustain the boosters for a very long time. But maybe it can be compensated by having a very good tank. We will see what will happen. So there is the Nidhoggur. It landed, entering siege, and let's see how it will perform against a DPS Wyvern. Now I'll just go straight full DPS on this thing, since it is built with integration, so it better survive. It better survive the drone bombs with the defense disruption. So let's see how much damage I'll be able to do on this thing. It absorbed a lot of damage with the damage. I barely scratched the surface of its shield with the bombs while the damage was active.
We're under attack.
And definitely a massive increase in the shield resistance, but I'm still doing some good damage on it because of the defense disruption. However, the shield boosters definitely recover that shield very quickly, and yeah, they're easily overpowering the DPS. At least they're easily overpowering the DPS when there is no implant active or when the defense disruption effect is offline. However, the defense disruption effect was online, and they still were able to fully recharge their shields. Now here is where the capacitor problems are definitely starting to be apparent. I mean, the capacitor is not in a bad shape whatsoever, but the capacitor battery is on cooldown, and have to rely on the ship's capacitor in order to sustain it. Now, the supercapitals have a Evo resistance by 75%, and that does account for neutralizers and Nosferatus. So having a lot of Nosferatus isn't really going to help you much, since you are not going to be able to absorb nearly as much capacitor as if you would, for example, use the Nosferatu on a normal Dreadnought, because these things have those resistances, and you will be absorbing about 15-25% of the optimal Nosferatu drain value. So having multiple Nosferatus helps against other capitals, but against a super capital, in this case a Supercarrier, it is definitely not going to do much. It's something, but you know, it's not going to be able to sustain your active tank for quite a while. Batteries are still the way to go. And well, battery is back up. I went full DPS on the Dreadnought again. Much better shield booster, much better shield performances. Definitely, you can see and you can feel the extra tank quite easily, but the capacitor is going to give out. And kind of funny that with this build, with the more expensive build, the ship will last a lot shorter than the previous build, where I had 2 batteries, and a cheap build where the ship was able to last for a very long time. So the ideal thing to do here would be to replace 2 modules, basically pull out 1 adaptive, pull out 1 reactive, and basically replicate the previous build but add integrations on top of it. That way you will be able to have some good capacity performance, and you also have really good shield resistance. So for the Naglfar, this build is definitely not ideal. I don't really like the capacity performance on this build, but if you combine the previous build with 2 batteries, and if you add the integrations from this build, you will get a very nice ship. And I actually would prefer that build over this build, because you will have a lot more capacitor to play around with, and you will be able to last much longer. So definitely very interesting result here. The capacitor is nearly dead, and once the capacitor goes down, well, you know what happens to the ship. It lasted much shorter than the previous cheaper build, and this is one of the examples where going full integration, going full bling isn't as good as having a smart build. Also very interesting result here that I wanted to show you guys. But again, it lasted really well. If you have a logistic for auxiliary, if you have a fleet, then tanking would not be a problem at all. And I'll save this ship for a different time, because I want to actually test out the build I was talking about here. I'm very curious to see how that will go. Now, time to play around with the Revelation. This is the Revelation with the battery build. Now, I used the Revelation primarily. I avoided to use the battery build with the Revelation because I was aware that if I get jumped by a lot of capitals, that I'm not going to be able to live long, since I am not going to have enough resistance to actually tank so much DPS, and that's why I mostly use the ship as a super tank. And that's where the integration super tank build actually came from. It came from the Revelation. And as you guys know, that Revelation survived about 1.2 to 1.3 million DPS, which is something I never rated it for, but it lived. And it's just a proof that a silly build like that on some ships, in some cases, really works. And it's situation. Every build has a situation where it works and where it doesn't work. In my case, that build was just the best thing that I should have had. And again, very glad that I did, since it made the ship live. Now, this is a Revelation here. This is the battery build, and as you can see, it already took some immense damage from the super capital. And as you can see, the armor repairers aren't really keeping up with the DPS. I think we are going to have a critical failure here. Yep, this thing is going to get killed very quickly. seems like the Revelation cannot withstand so much DPS with that build. It went down extremely quickly. And this is, yeah, that was fast. That was fast. Well, the first Dreadnought failed for today. Or, well, not exactly failed, but yeah, it didn't live long. And this is exactly why I never had this built on my Revelation. If I had, this would have happened to my ship. So, yeah, one cycle of the drone bombs, and the fighters
Warp
just did the
drive
rest,
active.
and the Revelation got destroyed. Okay, good to know. That's important information there. Let's go and let's bring out the next Revelation. This is the balance build. Triple adaptive and 8 damage control, and it will be sent back to the battlefield. Now I expect this one to live longer, a little bit longer, but based on how much the first one died, I don't think that this build will also live long. This is mostly because of how the armor repairs work versus how the shield boosters work. The shield boosters have a much faster cycle time. They boost a little bit more, but the armor repairs consume a lot less capacitor. They also repair quite a bit, but their cycle time is much longer. The booster boosts shield upon activation. The armor repair has to do a cycle before the repair is applied to the ship. That's also a difference. Well then, the balance build Revelation is
Warp
in
drive
warp.
active.
Will definitely be interesting to see how it will perform against the previous build. It will live longer. The question is how longer, how much longer, since the damage control and the extra adaptive are really helpful. We can also add a thermocirculation implant, but I didn't want to add any implant to this because it wouldn't really be. I know a lot of you guys don't use the thermocirculation, and just you know to kind of hopefully represent the vast majority of Dreadnought builds out there. Alright, let's enter siege modes and then we can start blasting.
We're under attack. We're
Okay,
being warp
launching the
scrambled.
bombs, launching the drones, I mean fighters. Drones. These are not drones, these are some big drones.
We're under attack.
Revelation lost the shield. It did take some good armor damage right on the start. And the damage control definitely helped out a lot. And let's see how it will work after the damage control wears off. Now it is repairing quite well, quite nicely. Definitely the difference in armor resistance is noticeable. It is able to tank so far, at least that's what it seems like. Time to load back the bombs, and will it going to survive? Is it going to survive the drone bombs? I'm just checking the distance, 12.5 kilometers. Let me just do something 1 second. Okay, there we go. Just in case if this
We're
wasn't
under
adjusted before, now it is. Okay, bombs loaded and launching them at the. Ooh, that was a big hit. Ouch.
Armor damaged.
Yep, that did some nasty damage indeed.
Armor
Ouch.
damaged.
Well, with the defense
Armor
disruptor,
damaged.
the Revelation would have been destroyed right now. So you can already say that that this thing failed. You can already say that the Revelation failed this. That this build kind of failed.
Warning.
With the defense
Capacitor
disruptor
running
plus
low.
drone bombs, the Revelation would have been torn to shreds. So yeah, that was a big hit on the armor. Almost the entire armor in one cycle, but it's still alive because I didn't use the defense disruption. Yep, now it's struggling to keep the
Armor
armor
damaged.
repaired. It's repairing, but the capacitor is out. And you know what happens
Armor
when the
damaged.
capacitor is out? Yep, the ship dies. I forgot I have batteries, but the batteries at this moment are not going to help much. The tank of the Revelation has been broken, and now the Revelation is getting yeeted. This would have been already over if I did use the defense scepter on time. I forgot. My apologies. But it didn't change much. The Revelation still got blown up. Well, not yet, but yeah, it's about to get blown up. It lasted much longer. It lasted much longer for sure. But eventually, in this case, the capacitor failed and the tank failed. Two failures on the Revelation. But it did last long. Lasted much longer than the previous Revelation, that's for sure. Which is good to know. So far, changing the modules did have a good improvement, obviously a noticeable improvement. But after a while, the ship dies because it just simply cannot tank, and the DPS wears off. It tanked for a while, but it can tank for a very long time. Right, let's go to the Super Trunk. Now this Revelation built like my Revelation in a very similar way. Very similar build. And very close, very similar stats. So let's see how this Revelation will perform against this Wyvern. Should be, in theory, much
Warp drive
better. But
active.
again, one capacitor battery means that you will be able to tank, but the question is for how long. So this build this fit may solve the tank problem, since you will have a lot of resistance, but the capacitor problem is probably going to stay the same. It might actually be even worse, since I only have like one battery, but maybe the extra tank means that I'm not going to have to repair much. We will see what will happen. So siege is up. Let's siege up, okay, and let's see what happens to the
We're
the
under
Revelation
attack.
here. I'll go all out on the DPS this time. Defense disruptor is active, everything is active.
Shield damaged.
The fighters are out. Revelation lost shield, and immediately the amount of damage taken on armor is much less than it used to be, and I think it might be able to over repair the damage. Yeah, this is definitely much tankier, and the capacitor so far looks okay. So good start for the build. I'll be loading in the bombs very soon. As you can see, it doesn't do much damage now on armor. Seems like it is easily going to be able to tank the normal hot DPS from the Supercarrier. This is about 88,000 DPS. It's lasting really well, and it is able to repair. Or is it? Well, it seems like it is struggling a little bit. That's when it looked like it was struggling, but perhaps I just turned off the armor repairs. In any case, the armor is now being fully repaired. My Revelation had X types. I think these are X types as well. Okay, armor almost fully repaired. I'm going to be launching the second round bomb volley on the Revelation. But so far it's holding well. It's definitely holding well. Much better armor performance than with the previous builds. It seems like in this case the integrations really did help a lot at surviving this. A very interesting result indeed. Okay, battery up. Now I can keep the armor repairs running for longer. Yeah, it's repairing nicely. It is repairing quite nicely so far. But the Nidhoggur performed much better in this job. Definitely felt much tankier, and overall I feel like the shield tank did do much better at absorbing as much damage as possible. Okay, so pulling back the fighters, about to launch the next volley of drone bombs, and hopefully the defense disruptor as well.
We're under attack.
Bombs are loaded, fighters are out. Well, it's holding really well. The damage control is a champion here. So with the damage control active, you can easily absorb all the damage coming from a Supercarrier. So the thing is to basically identify when the Supercarrier loads the bombs. You can notice them loading the bombs when the ship starts glowing red, and when they are pulling back the fighters. If they pull back the fighters and if their ship starts glowing red, the moment they whip out the next fighters, that's when you need to click on the damage control, so that you absorb all the damage. Especially if they start to launch the defense disruptor on your ship, you really want to have that damage control active, since that's the only module keeping your ship from being yeeted. Damage control saves Dreadnoughts, that's for sure. And I really believe that in the next balance patch they might change some of the modules, basically change how they work. I have a good feeling that the damage control will be improved, that they will add like an extra 15, maybe 30 seconds on the damage control. Would be a very good counter to all the high DPS madness that is currently going on. Or perhaps they might even make it a active module. Basically, in Evoline a long time ago, you used to have the damage roll as a active module. It gave you plus 50% resistance on all damage types, on shield, armor and hull. I believe that would be a very good decision in this game if they make the damage roll a active module. That way it would definitely become a very important key part of the tank build on a lot of ships. And if that happens, then the damage control on the market will also skyrocket in price. But the revelation here is tanking really well so far, and I'm happy with the performance. No complaints on my end. Well, actually, I have some complaints. The capacitor, but that is to be expected. The capacitor with a full-on trunk build is bound to be bad, since only one capacitor battery is probably not going to be nearly enough to sustain the capacitor for a very long time. But it will be able to hold for quite a while before the ship goes down. Again, you are not going to permanently tank anything in the game. Eventually everything just goes down, but the time is the key point is to live for as long as possible, so that reinforcements arrive. And if you manage to catch a Supercarrier in this way, the Supercarrier, if glass build is that, a tank Supercarrier is not going to be able to kill a Dreadnought in a very short amount of time. So that was a very interesting thing. Now let's go and let's launch the Moros. The Moros is very similar to Nidhoggur, has a bonus on a repair module, in this case armor repairs. So Is the Moros going to perform just as good as the Naglfar? Well, I don't really think so, because it has lower resistance. However, it does repair a lot, so in the end, only one way to find out. But again, what I was talking about earlier, if the enemy Supercarrier is a tank build, a full-on tank build, there's just no way that they can kill your tank Dreadnought in seconds. It's not happening, because they simply do not have enough DPS to do so. It will be much easier to tank a tank Supercarrier than to tank a DPS Supercarrier. A DPS Supercarrier will have crazy DPS, but the tank part is most likely going to miss. So if you manage to catch a tanky Supercarrier, you don't really have to worry about them killing you very quickly. If you catch a DPS Supercarrier, that's when I would be worried, since that's when you have to have a very solid tank to actually live and to actually hold for quite a while until reinforcements arrives. And you can actually develop a lot of tactics. Basically, if you know that there is a Supercarrier looking at you, watching you, and if you know that they plan to drop on you, you can actually set up a trap for them, basically. But more on that in a different video. So the shield on the Moros went away so quickly, and now the armor. Did you see that fat repair? That's some fat repairs, not gonna lie. And is the Moros going to live? No. Or yes? Well, it survived actually. It survived the initial burst from the bombs, and it's repairing really well. These are some very big repairs. Basically, can keep the capacitor on eternally in this case, since 4 batteries just do that. Very impressed by the active tank of the Moros. It survived, something that the first revelation didn't. The first revelation just crumbled against the DPS, but the Moros is holding. Now let's see what will happen when I apply the defense disruptors. I think now it will die. It did take some hull damage. And yep, there goes half of the hull, but it's still repairing. Yeah, but it's going to go down, that's for sure. It's not going to live long. However, it lived longer than the revelation. It definitely lived longer than the first revelation. It's just because of how much armor this thing can repair. It repairs a lot of armor. But the only battery fit that so far managed to live the longest was the Naglfar. Both armor tank Dreadnoughts failed pretty quickly with the same build and with the same idea. Okay, well, time to go and take the other Moros. This is the balanced build, and I think the balanced build Moros is going to last much longer. I believe, based on the armor repair, I think it's definitely going to be able to withstand a bit more damage. It will still have very nice capacitor. The capacitor with only 2 capacitor batteries is, you know, it's not bad, but it's not going to be able to keep the armor pairs running at all time. With the previous build, I was able to just keep them running, and I had absolutely no problems with the capacitor. But we will see how it will perform with this build. As of now, I'm pretty happy with the performance. I say pretty happy. It lived longer than the revelation died the fastest so far. The revelation just got killed. That thing got deleted. That was the case where having more armor repair was actually better than having more resistance, but having both is the way to go. Having one is, you know, it will have its drawbacks, but let's see how this Moros will perform. Actually quite excited to see how much performance I can get, how much it will live against the DPS Wyvern. Okay, let me lock on the Moros and
We're under
let's
attack.
launch the fighters. Launched focus fire. There goes the shield. That was fast. Damage control active, and it did absorb quite a bit of DPS. It still took a lot of damage though, that's for sure. It did take a lot of damage, but it also repaired a lot of damage. Now I applied the defense disruptors. Well, the defense disruptor and the engine disruptor, which prevents them from moving and warping. And now the DPS should be drastically improved on the Wyvern. Okay, it is tanking. It feels like it is stable at about 80%, and that is impressive. However, if I were to launch the bombs and the defense disruptor at the same time, I believe if it didn't have a damage control, the ship would just get deleted. But the damage control definitely is what's saving the day here. It will definitely survive because of the damage control. However, it looks like it is slowly going down at about 50% armor now, going up and down quite fast. Okay, I pulled those words back. It is now recovering full armor once the defense disruptors went offline. Okay, fair enough. And armor is fully repaired. Not bad. It survived. Okay. It survived. Barely. I feel like it barely survived, but it survived. And now I have the bombs ready. We'll be loading them in very soon. And the capacitor on the Moros is definitely taking some hits. It is getting low, so I'm kind of very careful on how much capacitor I am using. I want to make sure that it lives for as long as possible. Okay. Let's pull back the drones to reload the drone bombs, and then we will be launching them back again. The armor on the Moros is about 75%.
We're under attack.
Bombs are loaded, launching the fighters. Damage control active on the Moros. It is repairing. It did take some heavy damage though, but it is repairing, and it survived the bomber tactic implant this time as well. Nice. So as you can see, the damage control is indeed extremely important. In the current period of the game, I feel like damage control is really important. I remember when the damage control is was kind of classified as being useless. That was a long time ago. Now the damage control is a very important key element of a tank build. Doesn't even have to be a tank build. A DPS build, a glass build also has a damage control. So that's also quite interesting to note. Now I feel like the Moros is slowly going down here. Now let's launch the defense disruptor and the engine disruptor. That should, I think this might be it for this Dreadnought. Seems like it will struggle to repair the armor now. Already at low armor. So now the DPS and damage taken will be improved. So let's see if it's going to live through this. Well, it is kind of tanking. At low armor. but the capacitor is slowly fading away, and I think the battery is on cooldown.
Armor damaged.
Okay, retracting the fighters to launch the bombs. The capacitor battery on the Moros is active, and it might actually
We're
fully
under
repair the
attack.
armor, but I don't know how long. I don't know how
We're
will that.
under attack.
How long will that last? Capacitor very low on the Moros. That was a big. Yeah, the Moros is dead. Yeah,
Armor
there we go.
damaged.
Massive hit on the hull. The tank has been broken, I think. I might be able to pull off a damage control on the Moros in its last moments. Well, I was able to repair the armor for a last time, but now, yeah, the capacitor is dead. Capacitor battery on cooldown, damage control is up, but the second the effect of the damage control is out, the Moros is also going to go down. It
Armor
lasted
damaged.
much longer than the Revelation did, that's for sure. Impressively long, actually. And I'm happy with the Moros' performance. Oh, I managed to sneak in one more cycle, I guess. Okay, well, the fight is still on. The Moros just doesn't want to die, I guess. Oh yeah, fair enough. Launching the final bomb.
We're under attack.
Fully repaired its armor. The capacitor is out. Yeah, this is just going to go through the armor like nothing. There we go. Moros destroyed. This thing lasted for a very long time. Impressive. That was the balanced build. The Moros did last for quite a while, so really happy with that performance. Really happy with that performance. It lived longer than the Revelation. So far the that lived the shortest was the Revelation. Number 1 goes to the Naglfar so far. Moros goes on the 2nd place, and Revelation is 3rd. And now let's launch the expensive Moros build. This is where things will get probably interesting, since it combines having good repairs with good armor. And of course the main issue would be the capacitor, but it lasted quite a while, so have high hopes that the capacitor will be able to go through this without much of a problem. Only one way to find out, so let's warp and let's see what happens to this Moros, and then after the Moros
Warp drive
we will be
active.
going on to the Phoenix, which is the last Dreadnought for today. Impressive shield, impressive armor resistance, and so far I definitely do have an idea on what to expect from a Dreadnought, and I'm actually very glad that I never really changed my build on the Revelation. Just confirms what I said. Everything just further confirms what I said about most of the things nowadays. Alright, there's the Moros, there is the Wyvern, and let's start. Let's see what happens with this ship.
We're under attack.
Okay, I'll go full maximum DPS on the Moros. The Moros is now in armor, damage control is also activated, and it is kind of effortlessly tanking all that DPS. Not much of a trouble to survive, and it repairs a lot. So yeah, as expected, this build, a tank build plus good repairs, is working really well. Now, I have to be careful with the capacitor. I run only one armor repair at the moment, and it looks like one armor repair running permanently is able to almost fully tank the Wyvern. Of course, when the bombard implant starts to work, I will activate the second armor repair, because one armor repair is definitely not going to be enough to tank so much DPS. But two armor repairs seem to be about the minimum, I would say, the minimum required to tank. Now the capacitor, as you can see, is getting low. Very soon I'll pull back the drones, and then I will go launch the fighters again. So far the Moros is holding really well. The damage that the Moros is taking is definitely reduced. However, as you can see, it's very interesting. Less resistance but more repair seems to be performing better than more resistance and less repair. The Moros definitely lived much longer than the Revelation. The Revelation went down fairly fast. The Moros put up a very good fight in the previous two attempts, and this Moros is also giving a very good fight so far. It is repairing the armor really well. I like how this is a Dreadnought graveyard on the sun here. Kind of funny. Alright, let's pull back the drone, the fighters, and let's load in the bombs. Let's see what happens to the Moros now, since the Moros is on the capacitor battery, and the capacitor is also running low. The drones with the bombs are launched. That's some big repairs. I didn't use the damage at all. I want to see if it can out repair, and it was able to out repair the Wyvern with the bombs equipped. So the Moros with this build can easily withstand the level 45 bomber tactic implant from a Wyvern without a damage being activated. The only problem would be the capacitor. If you have no capacitor, you wouldn't be able to out repair the damage. So this is impressive. These are some very impressive repairs. Now very soon I'll be launching the defense disruptors, and then we will see how it will perform against that. But again, a very common thing with this build is the weak capacitor. So I believe at the end of this little test today, a fusion between the integration rigs and the previous build I used, basically with triple adaptives and one damage would be the ideal build to tank a glass super capital. Since you have good capacitor, you have good tank, and overall you can live for a very long time. I believe I'm leaning towards that being the optimal for a situation like this. Of course, I still have to do more tests in order to see how they perform against other super capitals. But against a Wyvern, that's what I would say. Against a Wyvern, that combination is going to be, I would say, ideal, optimal. And now I launched the defense disruptors, and the damage taken is going to be improved, but the capacitor is slowly going down as well. So eventually, given enough time, the Moros with this build will also go down, not because it can tank, but it would go down because it would run out of capacitor. That's literally the number one cause of these ships failing is capacitor with this build, of course, since again the current build that I have isn't really good with capacitor, but it's really good with the resistances. And well, the Moros is now out of capacitor, and I'll use the same ship with a different build for a different time, with the same rigs but a slightly changed build, because I really want to see if that combination that I'm talking about is going to work. From what I've seen, I believe it will. Alright, well, the Moros deserved to live for today. It fought well. It did really well. Up until the last moment, it was able to repair really well, but unfortunately the capacitor failed. So if I went on, the Moros would have been killed. Now, time to see how the Phoenix will do. And at the moment, the first place goes to the Nidhoggur, second place goes to the Moros, and the Revelation comes at third place, last. How will the Phoenix do? Well, one way to find out. Let's yeet the Phoenix. Let's see what happens. Now, this is the capacitor battery Phoenix build. The Phoenix is very similar to the Revelation. The Revelation has a bonus on armor, the Phoenix has a bonus on shield, a total of plus 20% if you have the advanced skill on
Warp drive active.
level 5.
Warp drive active.
Now, will it die the same way as the Revelation? Well, we will be finding that out, I guess. Both ships are warping. I actually had to refuel the Wyvern. I ran out of fuel on this thing from the tests, so that's why it was docked. Alright, here we are at the location. Alright, let's boot up all the modules. The round bombs are loaded. Now here I rushed a little bit, and basically I set the Phoenix on fire before I entered the siege mode, but I don't think it would change much. That the Phoenix got torn to shreds in seconds. This is literally like the Revelation tanked. I feel like the Revelation tanked better, much better. And yeah, the shield booster on the Phoenix is not really performing that well, even though it is kind of built for that. But yeah, the Phoenix got torn to shreds. And I guess let's just continue firing, since I don't think that this ship will live longer than the Revelation. Because it would look like I am easily breaking the tank, even without the bombs. It has the defense disruptor active, but I don't think I really... No, okay, the effect went offline.
We're under attack.
So, let's pull back the drones, the fighters. Let's load in the bombs and let's launch them back again.
Damaged.
Yeah, the Phoenix is not able to tank for a very long time.
Damaged.
Yep, there goes the... Actually, it is holding at a low shield there, but... Okay, well, we might have something here. Maybe me messing up actually can be contributed to the awful start of the battle here. Well, Phoenix is at 50% shield, still alive. At this moment, I think that the Phoenix is living longer than the Revelation. It almost fully charged its shield. Okay, fair enough. Well then, who would have thought that the Revelation would be the last? The Phoenix fully boosted back its shields to 100%.
We're under
Okay,
attack.
let's load in the drone bombs and then let's launch the fighters again.
Shield damaged.
Phoenix at 50% shield. Yep, the Phoenix is lasting much longer than the Revelation, that's for sure. It is still alive, although with basically no armor, but that's my error. I just started to shoot too early. But the Phoenix is recovering. Shield again, impressive. And the shield of the Dreadnought is almost 100%. By this time the Revelation already died, so yeah. The Revelation will have the last spot in terms of how much damage it was able to tank. The Phoenix is the third place for now. We will see how the other builds will perform. Alright, let's pull back the fighters. Let's launch
We're under attack.
defend disruptors. Let's load the bombs.
Shield damaged.
And let's see what happens to the Phoenix now. Oh, that's some big damage. Yep, that's huge damage. Phoenix in hull. Phoenix in very low hull. It is alive. Not anymore. Well, it lived longer. Definitely lived longer than the Revelation, that's for sure. It lived longer than the Revelation, so for now Phoenix is third place. It did do well. I honestly expected the Phoenix to be the last, but it looks like that's not the case. So let's whip out the next Phoenix, and this is the balanced build one. Let's yeet,
We're under
launching
attack.
everything I have on this thing. Launching fighters. And immediately, as you can see, the amount of damage taken is significantly reduced, although still taking big hits,
We're
but
under attack.
not as bad as with the previous build. That's because of the extra tank. And it's fully it has fully recharged its shields. The capacitor is in a good shape.
We're
It
under
has 2
attack.
capacity batteries, so it should be able to last for quite a while.
Shield damaged.
Launching the bombs again. There goes the shield, but the shield boosters will hopefully, or guess not, second
Armor damaged.
volley of the drones went straight through the shield, and did I mess something up here? I don't think I did. Well, now once the effect of the bombard tactic has went away, it might be able to fully recharge its shields. So it feels like with a balanced build, the Revelation might actually have done a little bit better. However, interesting. They're about. I feel like they're about the same in terms of how much damage they were able to withstand
Capacitor running low.
with the balanced build. Let's load in the bombs for another round.
We're under attack.
Okay, bombs will be loaded. Launching the fighters. Well, it is tanking. It is tanking for sure. Definitely is tanking. Okay, it lives through the bombs. It can survive the bombs. Okay. the defense disruptors will also come online in couple seconds, and they will be launched at the Phoenix. Well, you know, it really feels close to the Revelation in terms of tank, but I still feel like the Phoenix is tanking a little bit better, but it's very close to the Revelation. It really feels close to the Revelation, but in a way slightly better, I would say. Just a little bit better. The capacitor on the Phoenix is also low. Okay, 20 seconds for the defense disruptors to come online, and then I will launch the bombs, and I will also launch the disruptors at the same time, since I have the damage control available on the Phoenix. The Phoenix is doing the most damage to the Wyvern, by the way. I'm using I think the large cruise missiles. Not quite sure. Yeah, those are the large cruise missiles. Okay. Alright. Defense disruptors
We're
launched.
under attack.
And now let's launch the fighters. The damage control is activated on the Phoenix. It did. In this case, the damage control literally saved the Phoenix from getting blown up, because with no armor left, this cycle would definitely kill the ship. But it managed to live so far, and it was able to withstand the bombard and the defense disruptor at the same time.
Warning.
Let's
Capacitor
load
running
in the
low.
bombs for a new bombing run.
Shield damaged.
The defense disruptor is still active. The capacitor is also almost low. So I believe this might be it for the Phoenix. I think, yeah, the Phoenix is dead. There goes the Phoenix in hull. Or is it going to be able to pull off a last stand with the shield? Is it going to be able to do it? Looks like it. But yeah, capacitor battery offline. And yeah, it managed to almost fully recharge the shield there, but eventually the capacitor went offline, and when the capacitor goes offline, it is basically too late. I will launch the bombards again, just to put the
We're
Phoenix
under
out of its
attack.
misery. Yeah, it's going to go down very quickly now, and Phoenix is destroyed. Lasted much better than the Revelation, for sure. Who would have thought that the Revelation would be the worst performer here? I really thought that the Phoenix would be the worst performer, but I guess I was wrong. That title goes to the Revelation. And the last Supercarrier, the last Dreadnought for today, the Chonk, the integrated Phoenix build. Now, so far, we see a very interesting pattern here. Seems like if you combine, I mean, I think at this moment it's fair, like it's obvious that for the Nidhoggur, for the Moros, and for the Phoenix, a integrated build plus the balanced build is definitely the way to go, since those ships have been destroyed because not because they lack tank, but they lacked capacity. However, the Revelation is in a very bad position, since it seems like doesn't matter if the Revelation has capacitor or if it doesn't have capacitor, it seems to be
Warp drive
dying
active.
either way. The only way for the Revelation to at least tank something is with that integrated build. Now, The other capitals don't really have to have the same level of integrations, but the Revelation is kind of a not with a black sheep in the whole case, but integration plus the balance build is definitely what I would go for the Revelation if I had to go and tackle a super capital, or if there is a danger of being jumped by a super capital, then that's the build that I would take for the Revelation. But let's see how the Phoenix will do with the last build here. Let's lock on and let's open fire. Defense disruptor activated. Fighters are also launched. And let's see how much damage I'll be able to pull off. Now I expect to see a very good tank on this thing, since the Phoenix has a very nice shield resistance bonus. It is quite tanky, and it did some. Did you see that? Look at the damage though. Look at that damage that the Phoenix took, and this kind of surprised me, since I didn't use the okay it's all good. I didn't use the damage at all. Okay, I will load the bombs again, and this time I will use the damage at all. So it was able to easily withstand everything I had thrown at it without the damage. Now let's use the damage control and let's use the bombard tactic again. And as you can see, it is effortlessly tanking the Wyvern, tanking without a sweat, and fully recharged its shields. But as you can see, the main issue here is again the capacitor, and I feel like the Phoenix definitely lost capacitor much faster than the Nidhoggur. Much faster actually, but it is still holding really well. And in this case, I feel like the Revelation might actually I think the Revelation lasted a little bit longer with the same build, because of how little capacitor the armor repairs are using. So
We're under attack.
in this case, the Revelation seems to win the integrated matchup here, because it was able to tank a little bit longer without having the capacitor die on you in this case. But the Phoenix does win the first two matchups, so it still has the third place. First Nidhoggur, second Moros, third Phoenix, and the last is the Revelation. Very interesting result. Didn't really see it being that way, but here we are. And as you can see, the capacitor on the Phoenix is getting quite low. I will be able to launch, I think, one more full-on attack with the bombs and with the defense disruptor, and then it would be time to dock all the ships and to basically draw a conclusion from this little test. Okay, loading in the bombs now. Let's pull back the fighters.
We're under attack.
Launching the fighters. The capacitor battery on the Phoenix is up and running.
Warning, capacitor running low.
Now the capacitor battery is offline. The Phoenix has about 20%, 25% capacitor left. But it is tanking really well. It is really quite, I mean, the tank is of course expected to be quite good.
Warning, capacitor running low.
But its performance is not that bad. And yeah, one or two more cycles and the capacitor is pretty much toasted on the Phoenix. So So yeah, will be time to pull up the drones, and let's draw a little conclusion. So the Nidhoggur and Moros seem to be performing really good in this sort of situation and scenario. The Phoenix comes at 3rd place, the Revelation comes at the 4th and last place. I believe the ideal build doesn't have to be fully integrated. You can do one integration and the other 2 rigs, normal rigs, and basically 3 adaptives and 1 damage control seems to be the sweet spot between having good tank and having a good capacitor performance, because if you have only 1 capacitor battery, obviously your capacitor will eventually go down. If you have a lot of capacitor but little tank, you can't withstand all the alpha damage and all the DPS coming from the Supercarrier. So you kind of want to build the ship in such a way that you have both, and that is possible on a Dreadnought because of how many low slots you have. So 1 integration, 2 normal rigs to keep things cheaper, and basically 3 adapters and 1 damage control with 2 batteries and 2 repairs is one of the ways on how to achieve that. So with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you enjoyed this little test. I was very curious to see the results, and we will see what will happen with some of the next Supercarriers that I will be testing out. So with that being said, if you would like to support me, feel free to like and subscribe. Stay safe, fly safe, and as always, I'll see you next time.